So today we have Marty Neal. I've only known Marty a couple of years now, on and off. He's dragged me through to a couple of events. He even threw me on the stage once, which was, yeah.
Literally.
That was okay. We managed it okay. So amongst other things, Marty has been a journalist. He has done various things in startups, etc., including helping start the OEF Foundation and the Cathedral Quarter. He was the founder of, or is the founder of AirPods, now 10 years old, was doing extremely well. I'm presuming it's going to come back very well after lockdown.
Yeah.
But
still doing well, guys. Still doing well.
Good stuff. But being the addicted entrepreneur, serial entrepreneur as he is, he has a little story to tell us about his latest venture that he has going on the side to do with his love of football. I'm not going to say fantasy football, but football games. So, Marty, without further ado, the stage is yours.
Thank you, Guy. And again, apologies. I did intend to put a presentation together for this. And then I thought, I'm not very good at presentations. And will this be the one where I just don't throw something together in 20 minutes just because I thought I had to? So I went, okay, this is my side hustle, so it's my rules. And so I decided, no, I'm not going to do a presentation for Guy just because he wants one. We're going to be renegades about this, and we'll just tell the story. This is my little business thing, my little passion project that I'm very glad that I got the opportunity to pursue, and AirPods being my main drag has afforded me the opportunity, the experience, and some of the know-how to do another little thing on the side. So it's called Football Fortunes. It looks like this. This is probably the best presentation I could give you anyway. And it's a hybrid tabletop board game and computer game. So it came from an itch that I couldn't scratch or needed to scratch for a long time. It's based on a game from 1987 called Brian Clough's Football Fortunes, which was very, very much my favorite game as a kid. So there were many long nights on the Ardoyne interface at Twiddell Avenue of a glowing screen of Brian Clough's Football Fortunes and a bunch of kids hiding out and trying to get away from the guys that are running around the local area. So yeah, we played this thing to death. It became a religion. It was genuinely, the best distraction you could possibly have from what was going on around you. And I never forgot it. So I walked into a charity shop a few years ago, happened to see a copy of it sitting on the shelf, picked it up, bought it, took it home and thought, you know what, the kid in me really wants to play this again. So I'm going to have a go at making a new version, which is what I did. Keep going, says Guy.
Keep going.
Okay, so yeah, it kind of gets curious from here. So about 2016, I put together a Facebook page just to try to gauge any interest for the old game, just to see what was going on. There was various stuff on the internet, a couple of little communities of retro football aficionados that were still talking about things, playing things. Chucked up a page. Within about 3 months, you had about 2,000 people on the page, which was extraordinary. I mean, this was genuinely just, is there anybody out there? Then there was a Facebook group as well that a guy called Adiz had been running for a few years. He'd kind of let go by the wayside. Got in touch with him, said, look, I'm thinking of bringing the game back. Can I contribute to the group? And he gave me it, which was a further 550 people that were interested in the game. So a bit of buzz, bit of excitement, and I always knew I could probably fund it myself, but I wanted to do the Kickstarter anyhow to try to just kind of build community and really get the word out there in a wider sense. So come July 2017, a guy shows up on the Facebook page who knew the original guys behind Brian Clough's Football Fortunes, Giles Hunter, the original publisher at CDS Software, and David Hall, the originator of the game. So he put me in touch with those guys, and also bizarrely in touch with Nigel Clough as well, who at that point was still managing Burton. just to make sure that everything was cool with him. You know, it was his father's estate, etc., etc. So it turned out that his dad had effectively sold the worldwide perpetual rights to use Brian Clough's name and image in a computer game forever, for £1,000 CDS software in 1986. Which was fine. So we effectively figured out a deal for the rights to the original game, and the mechanics of the original game, the intellectual property around the original game, the perpetual and worldwide right to use Brian Clough's image and name in a computer game, which is just surreal. Set about remaking the game. So I went over to Doncaster. Giles and David were very excited that someone wanted to bring back Cloughie's, as it was called, and had been known. It had been their not their biggest success. They had done things like Colossus Chess and Steve Davis Snooker, so they had some really big breakout success games on the home computing platforms. But Cloughie's had been their passion project, effectively, because it was unique. So it was the first game ever to mix a tabletop board game with a computer program. Absolutely unique format, absolutely innovative, genius thinking, really. So yeah, I went over, met them. You know, David had been very ill for a long time and he had pioneered stem cell treatment for cancer, and he was back on his feet again at that point and doing very well. I'm glad to say he's still around. He probably wasn't expected to be still around. So the treatment's been a great success, but it was a very emotional thing for him. It was his baby. He had come up with it when he was 11 years of age, effectively, and he had drawn the original game out on the back of old pieces of wallpaper in his mum's house that he still had, and you know, so very, very much his baby, his kind of, you know, his passion project, I guess. So yeah, we sat down, we worked out a bunch of stuff, we figured out a bunch of how to make a football game in the modern era. Because the original game, you know, there were no transfer windows. You know, players got paid in the thousands instead of the millions. You know, there was lots and lots of stuff that we had to work out. And then we set about really doing it. So it just sort of became an all-consuming weekend thing at that point. Got a designer on board, got an app designer on board, graphic designers on board. Just kind of started really figuring out how to do this, prototyping. And then in July 2019, is that right? Yeah. July 2019, we launched the Kickstarter. Always do things on memorable dates, so we did it on the 12th of July. So you'd remember it. My brain doesn't work very well, Guy. I need you know, very, very simple stuff going on around me in order to remember anything.
You can take the boy out of North Belfast, but you know.
Well, that was a bit of fun for me, and bizarrely, thanks to one of our very kind investors, we were in the Algarve when we launched it. So Kieran Gibbs, the former Arsenal left back, was living next door. Robbie Keane was across the way. It was just, you know, it's one of those moments, you know. And we never met any of them. Alan Shearer had a house up the street, Steve McLaren, all this stuff. We never met any of them because none of them were there when we were there. But we just happened to be in Footballer Row. Stephen Gerrard had a house around the corner and he had sold it. And I was like, I would literally clean his pool and be very happy for the rest of my life if I met him twice a year. So yeah, we launched it. It went very well. We were looking for 20,000. We were up to about 13,000 in the first week, which was great. I mean, it pretty much coasted the 22,000 on the Kickstarter, and then about another 3,500 on Indiegogo and various follow-up campaigns. So we had the finance to be able to do it. We got it designed up. We printed it in Cartamundi in Ireland, in Wicklow as well, which was a kind of, that was designing and printing a board game is quite a challenge. Like, I'd done magazines, I'd done, you know, various things. I mean, you know, always done design work, always done all sorts of stuff. Had a company that did design, no more art. But it's so precise. Board game design is such a precise medium, and such a risky medium as well, because you can never really prototype it very well. So you are kind of flying by the seat of your pants to some degree. So it was a bit more expensive to do it at Cartamundi in Ireland. But what we did was I went to was it W.H. Smith? I think it was W.H. Smith, and bought Junior Monopoly, knowing that they printed it in Wicklow at Cardamundi, and we effectively tore it apart and based the design on the Junior Monopoly game. So we knew that they were perfectly set up for that. We knew that every component they had previous molds for example, all that stuff, and we basically made it foolproof, pretty much, which was fine because the original game was sort of based on a Monopoly type setup anyway, so it worked very well. But in hindsight, a very good decision, because now that I know other people that have done board games, I know some of the disasters that happen when you get the spec 3 millimeters wrong and suddenly your box doesn't work. It's like, wow, okay, that this was more stress than anyone could have imagined. So we funded it then, yeah. So it was a year ago yesterday that the project was funded. Very, very rapid build of the app. A couple of guys from AirPods were interested enough to go and do it in the evenings and weekends. So, we know our process, we know how things work on that side. So we very quickly put together an ugly but functional app, which is still slightly ugly, but very functional. And we had everything out for the Christmas market in November, which was pretty good. But very, 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 very stressful times. So we had to ship like 219 Kickstarters in about 3 days, and it was all real cottage industry. Kind of, you had the wife roped in, you had Rory, your mate, roped in, you had his kids roped. Everyone was just packing and shipping these things all over the world. I think it was about 17 countries as well, and including Australia, which of course was up in flames by the time we were trying to ship to there. So, yep, a lot of challenges. And then we just, that was project complete for me. I had no real expectations as such. I genuinely wanted to play the game again. It was great to sit with my old mates over Christmas last year, and we're all still mates, the same guys that we were playing this when we were 10 or 11. Few beers, still having the same arguments, the same fallouts. The only difference is it's a fallout over Virgil van Dijk instead of being Rush this time, So that was great. And then, yeah, so it just kept selling. We stuck up a website, put it on Amazon. We were very fortunate to go on to a thing called Amazon Launchpad, which is effectively a startup platform within Amazon itself. So it essentially fast tracks you through Seller Central and really makes you prominent. So we put it on Amazon. We started selling about one a day on Amazon, which was pretty cool because, there's no marketing budget. There's no marketing force behind this. There's no people. That this is genuinely just going on its own accord at this point. So we've sold about 530 so far. We're considering a reprint. And then someone said to me, which is, of course, that's how these things go. So you kind of go, right, I've got my weekends back again. Maybe, I don't need to spend all my weekend doing this thing anymore. And then someone said to me here, is this the world's only multiplayer football management game? And I'm like, well, can't be, surely. I think it is. It's like, okay. So we started doing a bit of research. And it is. It's genuinely the world's only multiplayer football management game. Really is. So that sort of made us think, and then we applied for a few things. So we had a little bit of funding from Men Ice Screen, who were absolutely fantastic to deal with. They were great. So they games is under their remit in Northern Ireland, and having been around the funding corner a number of times with a number of guises and a number of different vehicles, Screen were genuinely easy to deal with, straightforward. If you're going to create this thing, we want to fund it. It was a very different experience from what you would have in startups, certainly, or even in charities that we would have had with the OES Centre. So basically, they're on the hunt for creative ideas and things that people want to make, and they genuinely want to fund. So we got about 6,500 from them to really take it to the next level and start thinking about Football Fortunes Interactive, which is a little bit of a secret at the minute, but we're working directly with the University of Ulster on a few little innovative parts through an innovation voucher on that as well. So there may well be an interactive version in the mix, possibly might be another Kickstarter next year. We've got various upgrades and things we want to do to the core game as well that we'll probably do at some point. It's all slowed down a little in the lockdown, of course. But it's just great to know, there's over 500 people out there playing a little thing that you just did really as a vanity project and for a bit of crack yourself. And if it had ended up me and my mates once a year playing it, I'd have been happy enough with it, I think.
So, did it wash its face?
Oh, easily, yeah, easily, yeah. Well, the Kickstarter put it in the profit straight away, effectively. So it raised about 20. I think all told, it was close to 25K. When you consider
when you took in the Indiegogo
sales, few sales just via PayPal on the website as well. It was probably 25K. So your production costs were probably coming in at about 12 and a half. So it was always profitable. Then you've got your your shipping costs are big because you have to move it from Wicklow to Belfast. Your storage costs, your distribution costs, all that type of stuff. It just whittled down, but it's washed its face on day one.
So tell me, on the Kickstarter campaign, I mean, I've always understood that the golden rule with Kickstarter and Indiegogo was to have about 30% of the investment or lined up already. Did you follow that rule, or did you?
No, we went the other way. I would say there's two routes to it. I would say I'd done a Crowdcube campaign previously, so I'd had some exposure to this stuff. And I would say on Crowdcube, the 30% rule definitely applies because it's equity investment. Yeah. I would say on Kickstarter, depending on your category, board games, Kickstarter has effectively created a board game renaissance, really. So it's a highly popular category, games in general, highly popular category on Kickstarter. So I would say when you're in a hot category and it's got a big audience, the rules are probably a little bit different. But the one thing that I would definitely say is you must build that community ahead of time. If we hadn't so quickly plugged into the guys that were already into this idea, and
with the existing Facebook groups and that sort of stuff.
And they were all in their 40s, with disposable income and all that sort of stuff. We knew that they would pay 50 quid for, a new version of the game before we ever did a thing, all that type of stuff. So I think we'd done the research, we'd built the community, and then the Kickstarter was just a natural extension of the community. But I think on equity platforms like Crowdcube, the 30% rule
you do need to.
Yeah.
And Amazon. What are Amazon taking in fees?
So it works out about it's about 9 quid all told from a $39.99 sale. So that's delivered. That's picked and delivered, and stored as well. So that's stored in Amazon FBA, picked and delivered.
That's much better than I expected, because that sort of number going through my head was sort of the same with Amazon and not on the high street and all that sort of stuff was about 30%, but you're actually
it can get up there. So we're on 5 marketplaces at the minute, but we're only really pushing it on the UK one at this point.
Right.
But you can go out on the Norway, Germany, you can go out, and then it starts to ramp a little bit. So if it was shipping more to Norway, for example, you'd be up to about your 30%, but then again, your pricing would be different. So you have to work it out per channel, really. The Launchpad's different as well. Launchpad pricing is slightly different, so it's more advantageous because it's a startup effectively. But the reach is unreal. The reach is unparalleled, really. And really, it killed the retail channel because we got an agent involved early days as well. Fantastic guy still involved called Rory Kelly at Red Knight Games. Rory's ex of Waterstones went out in his own. He's doing very well. He's going to open a premise up at North City Business Centre next month, where he's going to be doing games directly from the makers. He'll actually have a distribution place plus a shop up there. So he's very, very good at getting the retail distribution. But the thing for me was, once you started dealing with W.H. Smith and Waterstones and guys like that, my background in the record industry, I remember this very well. I remember the change as well. So the record label that I worked at was Bright Star Records. We were just about still in the vinyl stroke CD era when we were at Bright Star in the late 90s. So I remember Napster launch, and I remember the change in the business model, but I knew you had to do huge volume in order to make retail work. So we had offers from W.H. Smith and Waterstones that were just insulting, frankly. And as a small manufacturer, you don't have the volume in order to make that money. So when they're coming in and offering you buttons per unit, and you're going, well, no. I
Well, if
don't
I
need
was,
it.
yeah, if I was doing 100,000 units at a time, then maybe I might consider it, but I'm not.
Yeah, exactly. You know, and
Yeah,
no aspiration to it at the minute. You know,
yeah,
whereas if I can sell, so if I can protect the price point, and the one thing Amazon insists on now, that this is slightly kind of tough. You know, tough from a creator's perspective. No one can undercut them online. So
right.
that's one of the things you sign up to in
Yeah,
Launchpad.
yeah,
So we had Javi, for example, that wanted to take X units and wanted to sell it at X, and we had to say no because you're undercutting Amazon. So you're really going where the welly is, and
yeah,
Amazon is the welly. And you know, it's slightly grubby this, because you're kind of going, on one side of the fence, I've got a company that supports independent retailers. For my own thing, I'm dealing exclusively with Amazon, but I'm learning a lot, really, about, you know, what it's like to be an independent retailer, you know, because I'm effectively a sole trader for this
yeah.
thing.
Did,
So it's challenging.
so yeah, no, it's kind of interesting that you have, you know, you're on both sides of the fence and that one study. But when you started this out, did you plan out the process from the start, or did you just sort of say, or just make it up as you went along, as it were?
Well, because you had an existing product, so you had the
Yeah,
original game, and you had a jumping off point, if you
yeah,
like, you know, and we retained probably, at a guess, I would say we probably retained about 30% of the original game and the original functionality.
right.
You know, so you did have a jumping off point there, really, that kind of sped you along, you know, in
Yeah,
terms of how it might look. And, you know, it's probably a transition. So the new version of Football Fortunes, that this first version of Football Fortunes, is a bridge to the 1987 one.
yeah,
The next one might be a bit more, you know, kind of further away from the original.
yeah.
You know, but yeah, it really helped to have a guiding platform, if you like,
Yeah.
an
So,
existing prototype.
but I think what I'm trying to get on the business side of it,
Oh,
did you plan it out? Did you say, right, so
I
actually,
did.
you know, we'll go from Kickstarter, and then we'll go here, and then we'll go here to this
Yeah,
next stage?
to some degree. I mean, I didn't go as far as you would do with a business that was raising equity finance, for
Yeah.
example. But just knowing how to do those things, guy, you know, to be
Mm.
able to knock together a model in an afternoon, you know, and to just kind of, you know, think things through on a spreadsheet, to be able to
Yeah.
do that. You know, I couldn't have done that a decade ago.
Yeah.
Now I could do it in sleep.
Yeah.
So yeah, I didn't plan it too hard, because I'm kind of going, well, you know, it's a passion project, and
Yeah.
do I want it to make money? Of course I do. But if it's not making lots of money, I'm not going to consider that a failure, you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah. Yeah.
And also, as well, thinking about the digital potential of it as well. You know, I'm a software guy. Ultimately, you know, making a board game's a pain in the arse. Frankly, you know, it's not something you would ever want to do again. You know, I always had in mind that this is almost like the loss leader. This is the thing that seeds the digital version
Yeah.
eventually. So if all of these, you know, I've 500, no, I've less than 500 copies now, but 470 left. You know, if those 470, if you had to almost sell them at a loss, well, there's 470 potential subscriptions for
Yeah.
a digital version somewhere down the line. I haven't done the model for the interactive version, to be honest, because it was just a pipe dream until recent times.
Right.
Uh, but yeah, planned it to some degree. Certainly knew our costs. Understood our manufacturing cost. I think I'd seen Kickstarters in the past. I'll not name the very famous one that I was quite close to, that perhaps didn't figure out their manufacturing costs quite as well as they could have, and ultimately it killed the final business. It was such an albatross around their neck that the business never
Yeah.
really got beyond it. So you have to be careful there, and I think I'd seen a few failed attempts, and I'd seen a few businesses start on Kickstarter that failed pretty quickly because they got it wrong in the early days. So understanding the cost per unit, understanding the Kickstarter fees. I had it figured out that if we had to print it in China, you know, I'd worked out all of the very complex, you know, shipping costs and two port shipping and all that sort of stuff. So I had done a lot of the groundwork, I have to say.
Yeah.
But again, nowhere near the level you would do in an equity-backed business.
Yeah. Well, I mean, as I say, that's where the experience comes in, that you can knock the spreadsheet together. Which is what I call Fag Packet Plus
Totally.
numbers. That it gives you a ballpark that you can be confident on, so that in fact,
Yeah, I mean, you know, I mean, ultimately, it's a conversation with a wife, you know. So you're kind of going, right, so I want to do this thing, and she's like, yeah, you lots going on, you know, you're pretty stressed out. Yeah, I know all that, but I want to do this thing. And for me, one thing that was very important for me in this was the creativity of it, you know, because as a business becomes more successful, like AirPods, and there's more and more people, the first thing that disappears the creativity in your role.
Yep.
You know, I'm effectively some sort of accountant at this point. If you'd have said to me 10 years ago, you'll be some sort of accountant, I'd be like, yeah, some sort of really, really bad accountant is what I'll be, right? But, you know, really, in the absence of a CFO, and we will be advertising soon for one, you know, I've had to be the guy who figures all that stuff out. And you're into some pretty complex metrics a lot of the time, and, you know, you're trying to figure that stuff out. So it's a conversation with a wife where you're kind of going, well, I really want to do this. I really feel driven to want to do this. I would like to see this back in the world. I'd love to see some kid age 12 play this the way we did. You know, that's the thing. But this might cost us 20 grand if it went wrong. You know, that's a big conversation. So if the Kickstarter hadn't have funded, would I have done it? Yeah. I'd have took the risk on it. Sure. Absolutely. If it had cost me 20k, would I be happy? No, because the wife wouldn't be happy. And, you know, that's why you've got to do at least some level of planning, right? You've got to go, how much could this potentially damage my happiness? Well, it's probably all right.
Depends how much you like your wife as well.
She's you know, she's all right. You know, but no, to be fair to her, she was fairly supportive. She knew I was going to do it anyway. So.
So one last quick one from a marketing perspective. You referred to it quite a few times as Cluffies.
Cluffies.
Yeah. Is that what you and all your mates called it?
That worldwide, people called it that. It turns out.
So why have you stuck with the brand Football Fortunes?
Because no one knows who Brian Clough is anymore. So all the young guys, you know, if I was to call
James is mouthing, what?
Yeah, I mean, we did kind of float this. So yeah, I mean, we could have gone for celebrity endorsement. So I'm a good mate of Colin Murray's, for example. I did say to Colin, listen, do you want this to be Colin Murray's Football Fortunes? I'll not swear on your podcast with the answer that he gave. But who's making it? You. I'll not tell you what. But I hope he's got it. I hope he's got it because it's brilliant. It's absolutely brilliant. But anyway, yeah. So
we should have another conversation about this off air or whatever. But I would have thought there are rights there that you could easily ramp up. You know.
You could. But I think it would have stuck it in the past. Now what we did.
Oh yeah, no, I'm sorry. I'm moving on from Brian Clough now. I'm sort of saying, as you know, rights to the business, to the game. I mean, I mean, there's
see that guy. He's still in it. So he's like the Queen's head on the money.
Okay. Sorry, it is Brian Clough. Yeah, okay.
So we kept him in it to some degree, but
but there's no reason why, you know, potentially you couldn't turn this around and make this clippity clops. You know,
I would die happy. I would die in this chair really happy if someone rang Jurgen today and said, Jurgen, you know, would you like to have your name on it? 100%, 1000%. And it gets into a difficult area really because, so I'll bore you for a second with the history of football board games. There's a very, very good reason that a once burgeoning industry of football board games suddenly stopped in the year 2000, and it's called Sky and the Premier League.
Right.
So there genuinely was a great burgeoning little industry. Michael Owen, Gary Lineker, you know, celebrity endorsed football board games. Starting, I think the first one was Kevin Keegan's Match Day in about 1973.
Right.
There was a George Best one. Bizarrely, really, really bizarrely, there's one called Billy Hamilton's Football Academy with Billy Hamilton all over it. I mean, you know, total surreal stuff, right? But come the Premier League and come the kind of big commercialization of football and big commercialization of the licenses, then you get into hot water in terms of, you know, so Sports, is it Sports Interactive? I think it is Sports Interactive and Sega, who make the Football Manager title, which is by far the biggest and most successful football game on the planet. They were sued by Manchester United a couple of months ago over the use of Manchester United's name. But the complexity of the lawsuit was strange in that they had been using it since 1991.
Right.
But United's complaint wasn't that they were using the name. It was that they were using the name but not using the logo. Right.
Wow.
So they would have had to pay for the logo.
So it was breaking brand guidelines and that sort of stuff. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, and it got kicked out of court a little bit. That it'll come back. United are going to come back. It looks like. So there's a test of this running at the moment. I mean, Miles Jacobson, the founder of Sports Interactive, is very vocal about it on Twitter. So I'm not saying anything that he hasn't said. But you know, so there's a complexity around licensing, really.
Right.
So what we did was we said, okay, where we can't afford to go and buy. No one effectively can afford to go and buy the FIFA license because it's owned by EU Sports and FIFA effectively. And you'll have Pro Evolution Soccer by Konami, and they'll use certain things but not others. So yeah, it would have been absolutely great to be able to have the conversation and say, could we make this Jurgen Klopp's Football Fortunes? That would just be my happiness. As a Liverpool fan, I'd die happy. Colin, I would be outside his house just going right now, Jurgen Klopp's Football Fortunes.
Scratched out Colin Murray and put in Jurgen Klopp.
Yeah. With a T-shirt that says "has been" on it. Right? But really, I mean, I think the ultimate version of this game or this business is Jurgen Klopp's Football Fortune. Yeah. And if we could ever get there, that would be the proudest thing I've ever done. No doubt. But we had to go with what we could, and we did float the idea of kind of using Brian Clough more in it because we had the right to do so. And really, to be honest, anyone under 30 doesn't know who Brian Clough is. It's terrible.
Oh, you could make Brian Clough famous again here, potentially. I mean, I think it's absolutely fascinating, and when you're talking about it, and please, anybody else, feel free to jump in here. But I feel the old hairs raising, going, there's an opportunity here, and you obviously have, and you've obviously thought about this an awful lot more than I have. But
I mean, look, really, the innovation stopped with FIFA and Pro Evo because there was highly innovative stuff going on the home consoles. And if you think of Kevin Tom's Football Manager, I don't know if you guys remember that, 1982 on the ZX Spectrums and Commodores. Kevin Tom's self-published the biggest game of the 80s. Wow. It was absolutely huge. Just massive. It was written in his bedroom and self-published. It's famous for having his face on the front cover. I mean, it was just daft. The whole thing was daft. But because it pioneered an entire industry. Steve saying can't ask questions because...
Oh, sorry, I'm not in the chat room. Sorry, I haven't looked at the chat. Sorry. I was getting too carried away there. Here, let me just ask... no
worries. I think...
Stephen, we can't ask questions because if you... sorry, I'll unmute everybody here. Hang on a second. Have I just... I'm just... Ask to unmute. Ask to unmute. Ask to unmute. Ask to unmute. Can you all unmute? Can you all hear now?
Yep.
There we go.
There we go. So what we've learned from this here is that Guy Bucknell is a Liverpool fan because that's what Liverpool fans do. They just talk to one another.
Funny enough, I'm not actually, but there you go.
I thought, is everyone not a Liverpool fan now, Steve? Is that not just by default?
This you've got a whole bunch of pretend fans that in Manchester United have to deal with them, so you have to deal with the cycling fans. Right? So I did have two questions for you. One is totally frivolous, which is how being a Liverpool fan qualifies you to know anything about ball and build a board game, but then that probably doesn't qualify or need an answer on that one. I'm a Spurs, if anybody hasn't worked out, I should have a Spurs mug here today, which you normally have. The real question I had for you, Marty, is brilliant. Thank you for the presentation. Really love the concept that you've done, and I remember playing Cloughie's game away in the distant past.
Oh, there's always one.
The thing is, if you're going to scale this, now I know you're scaling it, would you just come along and say, right, this goes global, goes online? Would you say just handing over the rights, taking your percentage of this from someone else and just say, right, this goes, I will license this off to EA or some of the big guys.
That's kind of where I was thinking as well.
How to scale things massively, and that you could probably never really compete with if they decided to do something again.
I think that's a question.
Is that sort of in the plans, and how do you weigh off the if you like, the advanced organic growth that we can start with? Sorry.
Yeah, you're breaking up a little bit, Stephen.
Marty, are you?
But we can hear you.
I'm sorry.
Right.
Marty, do you want to answer that?
I think it's a question for every business in a way. It's kind of, I mean, this being now, originally David Hall's baby and now my adopted child. I guess would you let your adopted child wander off into the unknown future? And I mean the answer is yes, Steve. If a publisher came along and said we love the concept, we think we can do something with this, but we don't really need you hanging around, Would I be happy to go off and let it go off and do that? Yep, most likely, you know. And I think, you know, even, you know, if you look at our post, that has to be the journey as well to some degree. It's like, you know, you can't get too attached to these things, man. You know, you know, as much as I love this concept and I love this idea, if someone comes along and says I can do this better than you, it's on me to say, okay, well, I'll have a go at that, you know.
Yeah.
Okay.
And gratefully accept the boat in the Bahamas. Exactly. Yeah.
Well, yeah, but you know, be stupidly doing something else, guy. You know, that'll be the thing. You know. So
Marty, you're like me. You're addicted to this sort of stuff. You're absolutely. People asked me the other day. Somebody asked me the other day. It's about, you know, being an entrepreneur. And I said it's like being a poker addict.
You know, it's a lengthy refusal to get a real job. Is one way of looking at it. You know.
Nobody would give me a real job anymore.
Oh no, you don't want to employ me, guy. I mean, that's, you know, I don't want to employ me, you know. So it's, you know, it's
myself and somebody else tried a couple of years ago, and it really didn't work out. Really.
No, it's you know, you got to know thyself, right? Rule number one, right? Know thyself. But yeah, it's kind of lovely to have, you know, back to Steve's question. It's kind of lovely to have something that you're kind of solely responsible for a wee bit again. You know, because our boss is now a whole bunch of people's endeavor. And I do like having that level of involvement and having that level of control, if you like, you know, over the destiny of this tiny little thing. But I'll not be heartbroken if it didn't become a huge success. But,
You know what
but that's a lie, because if someone said to me tomorrow, you could make the world's best multiplayer football management game from Belfast. Sorry, James.
But no, what I was going to say with it, Marty, is that there's a huge background noise coming through.
Yeah, no, I'm trying to find who it is. So.
No, but just what I was thinking, Marty, is you can see your eye, you can actually see your face light up whenever you talk about this.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And if you got a VC involved, that could have soured things. You know, you just see through. You know, I know there was pressure, but it probably wasn't, relatively speaking, massive pressure. But
no, well, it was.
I say the achievement.
You know,
it's the achievement behind this. I think if you sold one, you'd be equally as happy.
Really, I mean, you know, honestly, to get the opportunity to make something that was so special to you is the thing, you know. So it's down to Giles and David. They could have been precious about this and said, you know, it's our legacy, kid. We don't want someone messing with us, you know. And then it wouldn't have been the same project for me, you know. I wouldn't have been able to say Cluffies and Steve would go. I remember playing that when I was, you know, back in the day. So, you know, really, it all kind of stars aligned to some degree, and you know, you got to do the thing that was probably the thing you would have given. You know, if you had stuck the choice in front of me 20 years ago of a whole bunch of things to do, and one of them was make a football game, oh, I'm in, you know, straight away. So yeah, I'm glad I got to do it. Definitely.
Oh, great story. I'm glad. Really enjoyed that now.
Yeah, excellent. No, really good. I think that's so probably actually a good time to call it a day. Marty, thank you so much. That was brilliant. A real professional who shoots from the hip and does it without a presentation. Even
a wholly unprofessional who got away with it, guy would be.
Yeah. So yeah, a great winger.
Yeah, you get used to it, man. You get used to it.
Just like John Barnes.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Sorry, I'm not a Liverpool fan. Who's that you're talking about there?
Oh, just the greatest winger ever to set foot in a football pitch. But yeah, I think I've developed an aversion to presentations, guy. You know, real startups will do that to you. It's like presentations just make me tremble, you know. But yeah, it's if I never have to do another one, I'll be very happy. But
yeah, that's not going to happen.
Yeah. So, just a couple of things from me then, if I can plug another couple of things.
Go ahead.
So we, off the back of the idea for Football Forttunes, we've come up with another thing, which is called Away From Home, which is going to be a YouTube series of quote some tubes playing football board games and having a few beers and kind of reviewing football board games, because no one's ever done it. So we talked to a nice screen about that, and again they were highly supportive, and we're going to talk to them further again. I have a meeting with a BBC producer friend about that as well at some point, so we may well even try to do it at a little higher level. But yeah, something will come along with some folk playing football board games. You guys are more than welcome to come along and be part of that silly experiment as well. Yeah,
Just tell us more and stick it in the Bizmerang Facebook group. I'm sure there will be a lot of people will jump on that and want to come.
Well, if anyone happens to know how to get in touch with Billy Hamilton, we want him to come along and play his own football academy game with us, for example. So we're going to do all these types of things. We have Norman Whiteside's chat going on. You know, we might get Norman Whiteside to come along play Cluffies because he was famously a 5-star in it at the age 16, I think. So yeah, all sorts of stuff going on that may or may not pan out. That there will be an away from home series of some description. Whether it'll be what I just said, we don't quite know yet. But if you fancy some beers and playing some,
sounds like a plan. Definitely,
we'll
definitely.
And then the last thing is we're definitely going to do post-COVID times, post-coronavirus times. We're going to do an occasional, but probably very occasional, tabletop football club. Coming to a bar near you in Belfast.
I think there's 5 or 6 of us here who will absolutely be up for that. Brilliant. Listen, that was great, Marty. Thanks very much. So I look forward to seeing you all again next week when we have Mike Thompson in. But no, that was excellent. We normally go, hey, thank you very much, Marty. So, thanks very much all. See you all tomorrow morning, 9:30 for.
Put in some crowd noise there. Yeah.
Cheers now. Bye-bye.
Thanks, guys. Cheers, fellas.